What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you for tuning in. Friday, June 5th. Exciting show. We're going to talk wine. Everybody knows me as a beer guy, but I started out as a wine guy and still love wine. So very exciting show. We have Matthew Horkey, co-founder of Exotic Wine Travel. Matthew, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, I'm excited to talk vino a little bit with you. I've watched your show a little bit as you've kind of been trying to communicate with the wine community. So I love where your head's at, and I love the way you taste, man. You got a good palate. I can tell even from a distance. So we'll geek out a little bit on that. But first, just give people very quickly kind of what is Exotic Wine Travel?
Exotic Wine Travel, multimedia platform. Basically, it's all about democratizing wine. We believe that discovering wine should be fun. Wine's all about flavor, connection with friends, with family. Wine doesn't have to be intimidating. And the most important thing is if people are willing to try new wine from well-known countries, exotic countries, lesser-known grape varieties, if you expand your palate, you expand your mind and opens your mind to the rest of the world.
It's perfect. I truly believe through food, through wine, through beer, whatever it is, you learn more about people and the way that they eat and drink and gather around a table than any other way possible. So
that's the reason why everyone likes watching Bourdain so much, right? Rest in peace. But
yes, that, and he was such a good shit talker. He made all of us pirates feel like we were the cool kid, like we had a chance to have a seat at the table. So
exactly,
yeah, really appreciate that. And democratizing it, I think, is interesting because it's very easy, to get super snobby in the wine world and the food world, all of it. Like we get a little pretentious sometimes. And so I think taking people directly to the source and putting humans behind the products and the process, I think is very valuable. So I love that. Now, let's set the table for people from your perspective. I'm very interested always on why we find our way into these different paths. So take us way back where you're from originally and give us a little bit of the timeline, because it's a very interesting story. You weren't onto wine from the get. It was very much a pivot for you before pivot was the word of the day.
I like that catchphrase. Most definitely. Before I get to the origins, I want to hit that last point you said before we forget it. In America, sure, people usually associate wine with snobbery, with just high class, but it's a producing country, and people drinking wine at the table casually all the time for years. It's not something you get about this way.
Yeah, I like it. I talk about very much. It's gonna be less and less about what's on the plate and who gets it to the plate. Who gets it to the plate is very, very important. I think it's going to be the same thing for the glass. Who gets it to the glass is going to be the story, the brand that exudes coming out of this, I think, more than ever, because we just need that human connection. We see how much we miss it. So I appreciate that. So take us back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Basically, I actually grew up I'm adopted. I'm adopted to a Midwestern family. I saw you're from Des Moines.
I spent time out there. My uncles own restaurants out there. My wife, she's a Cyclone through and through. She's from Iowa.
Anyways, I went to Michigan State University. I bleed green and white. If any Spartans watching, go green. Anyways, I grew up. My parents did not drink at all. I stopped drinking when I was in high school because once I threw up in front of my father after a big party, I was embarrassed. I didn't drink until I was 21. I went to Michigan State, saw a little film called Sideways my last year in 2004, and I just found it fascinating.
So if anybody orders a fucking Merlot, you're out of here?
Except I love fucking Merlot. So
I love that because the bottle he has a percentage of Merlot in it.
Yeah, it's 50% Merlot, and he shits on Cabernet Franc in the film, and this most prized wine is half Cabernet Franc, half Merlot, Chateau Cheval Blanc, which is a great wine. Anyways, after university, I went over to chiropractic college actually. Either medical chiropractic college, I chose in Georgia, and I had never traveled abroad to graduate school. And that's when I took my first trip to Iceland and to Europe. Just fell in love, got bitten by the wine bug. After I graduated,
hold on, Matthew. The robots are misbehaving. Let me reset real quick, and we'll keep going. Right back into it. You got the wine bug. You're in Europe.
I thought I was getting the echo. Okay, great. Now it's perfect. After chiropractic college, I literally the next day I got my diploma. I got a one-way ticket. I went to India. I traveled around the world for 6 months until my money ran out. I started to fall in love with the travel bug as well. I got to Southeast Asia, Singapore, started up some clinics in Jakarta, Indonesia, then Singapore, got blacklisted from Indonesia. That's a whole story into itself. And I always tease people. I say that I slept with the president's daughter, and that's why I got kicked out. But
that's
really,
a good story. It's a good story. Yeah.
It's really just a bunch of red tape, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
In Singapore, when I first got to Singapore, I had $50. I was living out of a dorm on a credit card, basically. And eventually, what I did is I started practice, and throughout perseverance and everything, soon I had one of the largest practices in Singapore and Southeast Asia. When I was in graduate school in Singapore, I was enjoying wine, but I couldn't afford to drink anything good, right? Yeah, but then as business started to improve, I started to drink better and better and better. Started going to a bunch of high-end tastings, tasting unique stuff. I was tasting basically every single day. Met Charine, who is my business partner. She's not on the podcast right now. In 2015, we decided that we were going to take sabbaticals. I stopped practicing at the time, turned over my practice. She was a management consultant, working with big time Fortune 500 companies, and we took a sabbatical to go around the world. And we found after about 3 months, we looked at our credit card statement, and she looked at me and she said, "We're spending all our money on food and wine." So by the time
you should,
yes, as you should. You're right. By the time that we got to Turkey, Armenia, and Georgia, there was not a lot written on those wines yet in English. Georgia is now having its Georgia, not Georgia, USA, but the Republic of Georgia in the Caucasus, which is one of the birthplaces of wine. They're just getting they're getting a lot of the spotlight, the limelight now. But at the time, they didn't have a lot of notoriety. Our first book on wine was about Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, the kind of the cradle of wine. And from then we just said, you know what? Let's start writing about exotic and unique regions of the wine world and kind of work our way up. I mean, I'd love to write about, I know you know a little bit about wine. I love Barolo. Charine loves Burgundy. We were nobodies. You can't just jump into the wine industry, start talking about that big baller stuff. So that's where we started. And, we started to fall in love with these small producers, the underdogs of the wine world, people that really had great stories to tell, are really fighting up against a lot of things, especially in Eastern Europe, where obviously a lot of countries went through socialism and communism and oppressive governments, and started to find the wines are just outstanding. I take a lot of these unique and exotic wines to blind tastings when we taste with more expensive wines, and some of these unique exotic wines do really well. I was just in Thailand last year with the Thai Wine Association. Some of those wines were actually spectacular. I didn't believe tropical viticulture could happen until I saw the vineyards. I was there right before the harvest. It was cold at night. It takes you to some really it's taken us to some really crazy places around the world.
And when you say exotic, right, you've branded yourself as exotic. For you, what does that mean? There's a couple things to it. When I think of exotic, it's maybe off the mainstream.
Yeah.
And moreover, what I really like about what you just said is the human stories behind it, because you don't have legacy of brands. It's not Côte Rôtie. It's not Lafite. Like, it's not these different iconic brands that instantaneously bring value. It's not even the regions. It's not Champagne. It's not Barolo. Like, it's not that. So for you, first exotic, but then I want to talk about the people a little bit behind those stories.
At first, because we were just going to we were working our way in these unique exotic wine countries. We've written 3 books already. One was about Croatia, which was our last one. We're working on the Hungarian book. We wrote one about Turkey, Georgia, Armenia. But in my mind, even parts of California, there's really some exotic locations, old vines. A lot of parts of France, Italy, Spain, people have no idea. And it's always exotic because in your mind, you want to go there. You think just Tuscany, for instance, it's not an exotic location, but to a lot of people, going to sit under the Tuscan sun in a villa, in a stone house, watching over the hills of Chianti Classico, that's an exotic thing. So It used to be. It used to be
Okay,
just
so like
exotic.
exotic for you is really like painting a picture for people. It's not
Exactly,
what's in the
exactly.
glass,
Getting
it's not the
it's
wines, it's not even the wineries. It's the
yeah.
setting, it's the people. It's something deeper than just what you're drinking. So I'm loving that. Let's talk about some people because you're talking about in Thailand or in Croatia or in Armenia. Like, who are these people that you're so inspired by? What are these stories that are coming out of those regions that we really need to know about?
You gotta realize that, a lot of times people associate, oh, it's Eastern. For instance, we do a lot of work in Eastern Europe. If Eastern Europe, the wine should be cheap. That's not the case, because number one, you got to think of a lot of these countries were coming out of socialist communist regimes. So basically, they have to start over again in the 80s and 90s. What does that mean? You have to go to school to learn a little bit, to make quality wine, not bulk wine. You have to invest in the modern equipment. Who's going to pay? That's why California wines get so expensive. And then land fragmentation. You got to think of it, those kind of countries, as Americans, we don't think of the oppression that these people went through just 30, 40 years ago. A lot of people fled the country, and one small piece of property can have 30 or 40 owners. So how do you track that down? Some people are dead. It's really hard to put together big pieces of property. And you see these people that are dedicated to making super high quality wines going through all this paperwork, having to buy from 100 owners just to buy 2 acres of land, 2 acres of vineyard land.
Gotcha.
So that's dedication.
So, do you see then a very different models then? Are there a lot more co-ops and things of that nature, a different business model instead of the massive land grab that wineries can be a lot?
I love cooperatives, number one. For anybody that wants to get into wine, if you want to drink super high quality wine, Italy, Spain, France, has some of the best values from cooperatives in the world. I'm a huge fan. As a farmer, we used to take our produce, our grain to the cooperative. So if you support local producers, small producers, you should be supporting cooperatives, because that's the real small guy. But anyways, in these countries where they were forced in socialism, communism to be together, there's not a lot of cooperatives anymore because nobody wants to work together anymore. So
they had too many generations of no fences, huh?
Yes, exactly. So that is a funny, and that's a really brilliant question actually that you asked. It's something that some of these countries do need, because cooperatives, you can make high quality wines at a low cost, especially countries that want to reintroduce wine culture. You can't start off by, especially these economies are much smaller than the U.S., right? But you can't start off by selling people $20-$30 a bottle of wine. When the GDP of the nations are $6,000 to $13,000 a year.
Totally different economics completely. So,
Yeah.
all right, I was interested in what you just said, kind of reintroducing. So let's talk again. I want human stories always, but connect with the dots for brand new grape varietals. Like, let's introduce people to some names of specific grape varietals they might be looking for, and then maybe a specific example of a human where you're just like, that is the person that is making that grape and going to be able to take that grape and put it onto a pedestal that actually creates an opportunity for commerce.
I think one of our first experiences of somebody dedicated when we were in Armenia. A lot of people don't even know where Armenia is. Was part of the USSR, right under Georgia. Obviously have had a turbulent history with Turkey, but anyways, it is one of the birthplaces of wine. Actually, the oldest wine producing facility is in Armenia, called the Armenia Cave. Actually, the oldest leather shoe was found in that cave as well.
In the world?
In the world. Oldest wine production center is in the Armenia Cave, which they ran out of money, but we got in somehow to take a look at it, which is really cool. Anyways, in that region, which is incredibly beautiful, there's a grape called Areni. And if you like something...
Spell that? What is that?
Areni. Areni.
Okay.
And if you like Pinot Noirs, if you like lighter Sangioveses, if you like something with a little more acidity, a little more red fruit driven, this is a grape to look out for. And there's a number of first of all, Armenians were really inspiring to me because they've had a turbulent history. A lot of them have left the country. But when you go to Armenia, a lot of them that had businesses abroad came back to start the rebirth of the country. So they're really proud. These are people that lived in Russia, America, Canada, made their money, and they're the ones pushing a lot of Armenian wines as grape varieties. There's one guy in particular named, the winery is called Zorah. It's available in the U.S. He is an Italian Armenian. He's Armenian, but he lived in Italy because his family fled during everything that was going on over there. And now he made his money in fashion. And his labels are beautiful. The wine quality is super inspiring. And he travels around the world tirelessly. He's the one that actually got the grape already registered in Europe because nobody had heard of it before. And when you see people like this, that, I mean, you do look, the joke is always, if you want to be a millionaire in wine production, you have to be a billionaire first. You've heard that joke 1,000 times. And I always, the Armenians are like that. They're so proud to show off their country, this grape variety, that they're just, it's almost, it's not a winning battle. I mean, maybe 10 generations from now, but that's how hard that they're pushing. It's incredible. Funny story. You want to hear a human story? So this guy was named, in 2000, his first vintage was named one of the top in Bloomberg's top 10 wines of the year. And it was up there with, like, I think Cheval Blanc was there, like all these ridiculous wines. So I wanted to visit. When we got to Armenia, I said, hey, I messaged him, we're writing a book, I want to visit. He said, we don't take any visitors. No visitors. Okay, so we went to this remote region, this remote village. Armenia is a high plateau. The whole country is like converting to a 3,500 meters above sea level at least, goes up to about 11,000 feet. Went to this small guest house we stayed, and there was somebody there, and Charine looked over and she said, that's the owner of Zorah from the internet. And I said, oh, really? And we sat down, had breakfast, we talked to him, we tasted the wine, we wanted to write down. He's like, oh, okay, great. So he invited us into the winery, and that's how we met. We're still actually pretty tight with them today.
Two-part question. I'm interested. Why excuse me, I need to learn how to speak. It's kind of my job. Why are there not more publications or writers or attention to people like Zorah, to that part of the world, or those individuals or those grapes? Why? First that, and then why is it so important for you to tell those stories?
So that's a great question. Number one is, why are there, first of all, if you look at the major publications around the world, like I'm subscribed to all of them, Robert Parker, Wine Spectator, Venice, James Suckling, those are like 4 of the biggest ones in America. If you look at the regions, they're usually only reviewing regions that are collectors are going after. So you're only thinking of Bordeaux, Burgundy, Barolo, Tuscany, even places, Italy, Spain, France. A lot of regions, France, are not even covered.
Right.
In Italy. So that's one thing. Number 2 is production in these unique wine countries is so tiny, right? They don't have the scale to produce millions and millions of bottles so you see it on the supermarket shelf. So you have to find specialty importers, which in the US, there's a lot of great specialty importers. And 3, the local markets are so voracious because the locals obviously are so proud they're producing good wine. Like Croatians, they drink almost all the best stuff. That's why we wrote the book. So when visitors come, they can sort through the crap to know what the good wine actually is. And why it's important? Sometimes.
Well, hold on, let me pause you there, because I'm interested in a couple things you just said. So one, it's not necessarily that they don't care about those stories per se, but one article by Robert Parker would sell out the entire year's vintage supply of a grape varietal, and there's not necessarily enough product available. So that's a big, important kind of just the dynamic of the way that it works when they write about something is kind of one. It also strikes me now why the travel part of your company is so important, because you're saying, don't necessarily just drink this wine. You have to go to this country to go meet the people, go to the winery, and then drink the wine, in part because you want to introduce them to those human stories, as well as the fact that probably you're not going to be able to get those wines accessed in your market. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So then for you, why is it so important then for you to connect people to those stories, those people, and those wines?
I'm going to connect both of them. So what is happening nowadays, because you're in food and beverage so much, you already know this, is obviously critic scores, stuff, they don't sell like they used to. Obviously, you can't just slap a Robert Parker 92 point score on and it's going to sell out. Consumers nowadays want to go meet the winemaker. They want to spend time in the vineyard. They want to taste, right? Like you were talking about with your wife. So the reason that we think that's important is people should be going to these countries, and some of these producers, these people in the industry are working so hard. They deserve to have a positive impression. So if you go to a country, you maybe make the extra effort to find the better producers, the better wines, the better grapes to try. And that's where we came in. Now, is it important? I mean, that's all relative. That's all relative. Sometimes I wonder, oh my gosh, is it even that important? But I do believe it is. It does make a difference. People forget to understand that you don't see this in Napa because Napa's all big money, yada yada yada. People have made their money elsewhere, but a lot of wine production, it's small farmers, and selling 10,000 cases of wine means that they can feed their family for the entire year. So that means a lot.
Yes, that means a lot. Absolutely. I could not agree more with that. And so thinking about that right now, right, there's two things happening when I think about your industry that I am undereducated on. So I want your input. We're drinking more alcohol right now because of a pandemic. We are not traveling at all because of a pandemic. So in part, there's maybe more opportunity for attention to the wines, way less opportunity for the attention for the travel. How are you kind of thinking about that struggle, that challenge, or that opportunity kind of in this moment specifically?
You're really bright to think that. I think I don't know who the heck knows. We're actually locked down in Croatia right now because we can't. Europe is opening up, but opening up to EU citizens. I'm an American passport, Charine is a Singaporean passport. We're still kind of. So I think that people will want to travel as soon as possible. And yes, I know the situation is for a lot of people around the world is bleak. I understand that 100%. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people that have the means and do want to travel and do want to get out. And those are usually the people that are looking out for higher quality wines in general. So I think that things will bounce back. A lot of producers are obviously braced for a tough year. Obviously, a lot of restaurants closed. A lot of people are not selling as many wines. For my business, we're just media writing. It actually is it's decent because producers want to get more and more exposure. Like you're doing more and more of these live podcasts because people are at home, want to watch something. So producers are willing to reach out to try new things to get their products, to get their wines seen. So who knows? Who really knows? Actually,
Nobody knows for sure. Everybody is taking a wild guess and a stab at it. And just again, for you, I think the fact that you're trying to connect it to the humans makes it more important to me. What about the wineries themselves? I hear this a lot in the fields, because of the challenges with physical distancing and things like that, and just the labor force in general, or the stigma potentially of the process itself and not being transparent. All of these different things are at play. A lot of food in the fields is going fallow, milk getting imported, all these different things. Are there struggles to that of getting attention to the vineyards themselves, the wineries themselves, the vines themselves? I know we're not at crush. That would be a much bigger challenge. But are there challenges playing out right now in the actual vineyards themselves?
Well, it's also, you're asking really astute question. So you have to realize that I used to travel full time, but the last 4 months I've been locked down in Croatia, and the 3 months I've been locked down in Zagreb. This is an important time in the vineyard. So I can't say from outside Croatia. I can say in Croatia's dominated by small producers, and a lot of the producers don't have to hire people from the outside to come in. So a lot of producers, besides the sales part, which is stressful, but besides the sales, a lot of producers are enjoying this time because they don't have to go on sales trip because you got to sell wine. So you got to go out and do tastings. You got to sell. They're enjoying just being in the vineyard, being in the cellar. Yeah, but obviously sales is hurting. I know that there's problems here in Europe. Is they've started to open the borders to like a human corridor for workers from more eastern parts of Europe, where Western Europe depends on those workers that labor to work in the field. They're opening up some borders so that can happen. Right. I don't know. I have no idea. I know there's a lot of wine unsold. There's a lot of cheese who saw unsold in France. A lot of that.
Uh,
I'm having, give it to me. I'll take it. I'll take all the cheese.
Thanks. I love that the government of France is telling people to eat more cheese. Like the French already
Yeah.
needed an excuse to eat more cheese. Now you're doing your civic duty if you eat more cheese. One last thing, kind of on a technical standpoint, that I'm interested in is DTC, direct to consumer. We see it playing out everywhere. We see now loosening of liquor licenses everywhere to be able to get products directly to consumers. Are you seeing any of that playing out in wine? What's happening with the three-tier system, the infrastructure of supply chain logistics? Any thoughts on that? Anything you're seeing?
America, I can't really speak because in Europe, the three-tier system, people don't get it all, because in Europe you can get the wine and you can sell it also. You don't have to. You're the same distributor, importer, whatever. I hear Europeans are not as good as most of them are not as good D2C like California wineries are, or Washington, or even Oregon wineries are. So they have to develop this, and they still don't. Like, you look at a lot of these websites, because a lot of them have no technology. It's not even a website, but they ask you to email them, then they'll fulfill the order. It's not so easy.
Right.
In the U.S., because I mean, things have been changing the last couple of years. I follow it closely because when I'm in Michigan, I order wines online and I want to get sent there. Interstate shipping is starting to break down in some states. It'd be great if that system kind of breaks down. I know a lot of lives depend on that. I know you're losing a lot of jobs, but it also helps the consumer because the prices of wine drop tremendously if you get rid of all those.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of disruption. I think of, Gary V. Vaynerchuk and the Wine Library, what they're doing with wine text. I mean, talk about reducing friction. Definitely, if I was on the supply chain side, the three-tier system, I'd be a little nervous. Do you see anything playing out with kind of those type of direct to consumer, not just direct to consumer, but like no friction to consumer?
So funny because that's not my area of expertise. I'm not in sales or distributing. I'm in mostly just media, writing, producing videos, writing. From what I see as a consumer, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think what I see in Europe, they're slower to develop this because it just doesn't really connect with them. In the U.S., I mean, there's unlimited potential. People don't realize. First of all, in the fine wine market, the U.S. still supports a lot around the world, especially in the premium to super premium wines, which sounds expensive, but in the U.S. premium wine is only above $12. I think that's the real category, and then super premium's above 25. But there's a lot of room, I think, for that to improve in the U.S. I think, and it would just make everybody happier. People would be drinking better wines, not just supermarket wines, at a better price, because the wine industry is quite archaic, as you know. It's really failed to develop new consumers. That's what hopefully that we're a small part of. That's what I'm a small part of. I want people to try new things, to drink new wines. Kind of like Gary V. I was always huge on him, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both commerce and storytelling, and so I think the more that we can connect the human stories and then also create the infrastructure for the commerce side of it, I'm a fan of that. I will co-sign that kind of effort all day long. And so, I see you telling the human stories. Now my brain goes right to, great, I want Zorah wines. How then do we create an infrastructure where there's a pipeline to that for the consumer market that is thoughtfully curating the wines they're drinking because they give a shit about the people behind that in the process?
So we do affiliates on our website. We don't take sponsored posts, sponsored reviews. That's doing an affiliate website that, some journalists or traditionalists might have a problem with it. Okay, that's what we do. But I'm just on the flip side, it's still so difficult. People find our articles were ranked high in Google. You have an affiliate, or a link, not even affiliate link, or a link to Wine Searcher, but then they just have to take even more steps to really locate the wine. It's not so easy.
Yes, I'm a big fan of that. So we're going to wrap up now. I want to get some parting thoughts from you. And then first give a shout out to our friend Brett Reynolds, who actually connected us, because so much of this show and the whole premise is to introduce us to what we call Unsung Hospitality Heroes. It's humans at every level of the ecosystem. That is hospitality, that's food and beverage, that's travel. I think it's so important, and it's been very important to me to just be completely open. So, you know, I get introduced to so many people that now I have a new experience of a country that I've never been to, yet now I'm compelled to learn more about Armenian wines and Croatian wines. And that drive, that thirst for knowledge, I think is so important to connect us as humans across these fake divided lines that don't really divide us. I don't speak the language. We may have completely different backgrounds, yet when we drink a glass of wine on a vineyard in Armenia, we will be as connected as we can ever be. I truly believe that. So I'm so grateful that Brett connected us.
You know, and the last thing to wrap it up is one thing, you know, in times like this, you know, people will question what's actually important. Is what I thought about, is wine really that important? But if you think about exactly what you're talking about, the most connected I think that you ever can be to people when we were sharing a drink with them and sharing a meal with them. And then even to expound upon that, you know, some of the greatest, the biggest political deals, treaties, everything, how'd they go down? A bunch of leaders got together and they were usually drinking wine. Actually,
That's it.
so that's how the world moves around. So
that's it. Wine is truly like the diplomatic connective tissue, the thing that unifies so many of us. I think is such an important thing that when we sit at a table together, whatever it is that we're eating, drinking, commiserating, it matters. And so when you say, is it important? There's moments about it that's frivolous. You need this wine or that wine. Doesn't really matter. Yet the important is the fundamental connection between humans. And I think that's what you're really doing. So any last thoughts to kind of take us out into this weekend?
I actually think that too, wine is important. I know for myself personally, I haven't always been a great chef, although I love food. I've traveled all around the world, tasted all these unique things. Because wine and tea, especially wine, chemically are the most complex beverages in the world. It really helps sharpen your mental acuity. And I've just noticed my food tasting, my awareness of ingredients of what's in dishes, what's on a plate, have increased tremendously because I've had to, the last 5 years, I focus on tasting wine.
Sounds like the most important thing I could imagine doing is tasting as a job. I love it. Absolutely. So I appreciate it. Matthew Horkey, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for taking some time. Thanks for a little bit of inspiration and introducing us to a couple new people, new parts of the world, new grapes. I think it's really important.
Thanks, Jensen. I really appreciate it. It was awesome. And thanks, Brett.
Yes, thanks, Brett. All right, Matthew, take care. Be good.
Yeah.
Just drink wine with somebody. I mean, like, it's as simple as that. Find an opportunity to connect with people. If you don't drink wine, if you don't drink, that's still okay. Get around the table, I think, is the important message to that. And it changes the dynamic of what you're eating and drinking when there's humans. Humans, people. I'm going to keep telling you, I'm going to be a broken record about it. Humans are what matter. It's who gets it to the plate. It's who gets it to the glass. That's what matters. And I think we see that more now than ever, that the products themselves can be easily commoditized. And it's so subjective what's better than something else. Yet the compelling humans behind that, it always matters. So, all right, appreciate it, everybody. Tomorrow, Saturday, June 6th, Ryan McCaskey, chef owner of Acadia in Chicago, is going to be on the show. Pumped to talk with him. He did a really cool burger event that we'll talk about a little bit, where he collabed on a burger with Sophia Bush. He's been doing a lot of work getting farmers markets going in Chicago and connecting people to free produce as well, which I think is very important. Chicago, there's a lot of good people we've gotten to talk to in Chicago. I've been very, very impressed. Moving up and up and up the list of, like, I got to go somewhere after things settle down. So tune into that tomorrow, noon Mountain Time, 1 p.m. if you are in Chicago. All right, everyone.